Welcome to Inside the Pack, episode number 13. With me is Dan Webster. I'm Mike Wazinski as we get ready for this weekend matchup against the Lone Star Brahmas. We'll also discuss about this past weekend against the Topeka Pilots. But first, we're going to start things off a little different by going right into the interview with the leading point scorer, Alex Dominique. Alex, thanks so much for joining us here inside Chili's Pro Shop for Inside the Pack.
Thank you for having me.
So, Alex, you obviously had the only goal this weekend for the Ice Wolves. It was a fantastic goal, by the way, as well. Tip in off of Sean Henry's left point shot that came on Saturday. Break down that goal that you got, and for the fans at home.
So I won the face-off, and Griffin passed it to Sean, and I saw that the center was puck watching, so I just slipped in right behind him, and I was wide open for the tip, and really focused on it, and luckily went right where the goalie wasn't. So
your line of McCosh and Sanum and you has just been phenomenal over the course of the last 2 weeks or so. I believe going into this past weekend, you guys had combined for 19 points in the last in the last 3 games. So, what can you attribute that recent success to?
Definitely forward skills that we do with Coach Kelly and Coach Fox in the morning. They taught us how to do the cycles and moving without the puck in the offensive zone, and that really created all those scoring chances that we got in the soft ice and backdoor plays and all that stuff. I mean, Griffin was wide open on his goals last weekend against Odessa, so I definitely think that helped a lot. And we've just been playing with confidence ever since Corpus. I mean, ever since the new year, really, since we've been about 500. There's a lot of confidence and energy in this group, and especially in our line. So I think that it's been helping us lately.
Do you think that the influence on that your line has had, because you've been so successful, that you've been able to energize some of the other players because you really are moving out there?
Yeah, I think that when we score, other people want to score too. I mean, same for us. When I see another line score, I'm like, wow, like that looks fun. We want to go out there and do the same thing, help our team win. And win the game. Winning is fun, and we've been doing a lot more of that in 2020.
So there's 6 other teams in the South Division. We're not quite sure how the South is going to look next year with the addition of Wichita Falls out of Texas, and whether or not the team we just saw this past weekend, the Topeka Pilots, if they're going to remain in the South Division or switch divisions. But regardless, out of the current teams in the inaugural season for the Ice Wolves, this past weekend, 74 PIMs on Saturday alone, combined between the Pilots and the Ice Wolves. I mean, is Topeka the biggest New Mexico Ice Wolves rival? Is it, or is it Shreveport, who we'll see in the weeks to come?
I would say it's probably Shreveport, and then probably Topeka second. Every time we play them, there's lots of fights and scrums in front of the net after the whistle. It's just the South Division. That's how it is, and we got to deal with it.
How can you guys kind of help one another staying disciplined? I mean, I often sometimes see guys pulling one another away from the fray. How hard is it to stay away from like a post-whistle altercation?
It's I can't lie. I don't think it's possible. When a guy comes and he punches you in the head after the whistle and you do nothing, you just want to hit him back, and that's what happens every time. I don't think there's anything you could do about it.
So for those listening on Inside the Pack, episode number 13, again, we have Alex Dominique here, the leading point scorer for the Ice Wolves, 11 goals, 19 assists. And what he was just talking about a few seconds ago was the Saturday's matchup. Jordan Gonzalez hit Alex Dominique from behind in the back of the head, which led, and we were saying this on air, led to a domino effect in which Dominique was then abruptly put right into the path of the Topeka's captain, Austin McCarthy, who then kind of fell over after losing his balance. Well, Gonzalez took exception to Dominique hitting him after you were hit by Gonzalez, and then Gonzalez went after you, and that led to Griffin and Gonzalez being sent to the dressing room early for the second period, as they both were assessed a 2 and a 10. So obviously you guys don't play them until the final 2 games of the regular season. What are your thoughts on ending your inaugural season against the Topeka Pilots? The season series between you and them is tied 3-3.
Yeah, I think it's great. We have an opportunity to really send a message for next year. It'd definitely be great if we could win both games, but we've swept them before. We can do it again, but we just got to regroup. We have some injuries and suspensions. When everyone will be back to healthy, hopefully we can make it happen.
So you played with three lines this weekend, and or on Saturday night. What does that do in terms of shift the times, and how do you have to adjust your play?
You have to take shorter shifts, manage the lines, so dumping pucks in instead of trying to dangle someone and turning it over. It was definitely more tiring when you would get off the ice and then there would be a power play, and right after I'd have to go back on and I'm like kind of dead already. So it was hard, but when everyone will be back, I think it's going to be a little bit better for us.
One of the things Mike and I talked about, we touched on it a bit earlier, but it seemed to me that Topeka's strategy was to try to goad you guys into getting penalties, either for roughing or fighting or whatever. They just seemed to have that strategy that they were constantly trying to come after you guys. Do you think that's what they're doing, is to try to get us into the penalty box, or do you think that they're just a dirty team?
Yeah, I don't know if they have a strategy. It could. I think it's just how the South Division is. I mean, Lone Star does that too. Shreveport especially does that too. I mean, they Amarillo, they pick you like basketball when you don't have the puck and stuff like that, which technically isn't allowed, but it's not enough to call a penalty, so they'll do it anyways. And I think it's just they're older teams, a bunch of 99s on their teams. We don't have a single 99 in the lineup right now, and that's just experience and how they've been playing. So they probably went through it too when they were younger.
Alex, you have 6 weekends left in your inaugural season, for the Ice Wolves, and 3 of those weekends will be played against non-playoff teams. So going up against the playoff teams, how important is it for you guys to, either pick up the full 4 points or, split the weekend or pick up 3 out of 4?
Yeah, 3 out of 4 is, it's a good weekend for sure. Again, once we'll be healthy and we'll have some good weekends at practice, I definitely think that we have better chances of doing it this year because, up until 2020, we were losing all of those games, and we've won some games against Kenai and Amarillo in the new year. So I think it's possible to do it against Lone Star, finally get a win against them.
What is the goal for this team?
We want to win, and we want the structure to be good for next year. We want to build that chemistry up so next year we can come and everyone's a year older, and that once we're all fitting on all together next year, we just contend for a championship.
Dom, I've been noticing on NBC that not only did they have Hockey Day in America, and the USA Hockey had a Hockey Week in America, NBC also has been really. It was just on that Hockey Day in America. It was just wonderful to see Willie O'Ree be interviewed. I had the honor and pleasure of seeing him play for the San Diego Gulls, and he broke the racial barrier in 1958 in the NHL, and so I just wonder what kind of an inspiration is he to you or any other black or minority player who hasn't traditionally been in hockey? But tell me what you think about Willie O'Ree.
He's definitely a figure for me and a lot of players like me. And I never really watched him play or anything like that, but he's a symbol. So in Canada, there's a lot of black hockey players. So for me, I'm pretty used to it. Down here in the U.S., there's a lot less because everyone plays football and basketball here. But obviously he's a pretty big inspiration. But I've been around a lot of black hockey players in Canada. So
Anson Carter was interviewing Willie, and he said to him, Willie, it's been said that you have influenced 150,000 young hockey players. How does that make you feel? And Willie turns to Anson and he said, seeing you play in the NHL is what makes me feel good, because he really is the diversity ambassador for the NHL. And I said to Stan Hubbard, the team owner, is there any way that we could get Willie to come here with the hockey museum that they've got in this semi truck that has all sorts of black history in that. And Stan was saying that it might be a little difficult, but I think it'd really be good to, because I know that truck was leaving Nashville to go to the West Coast. I'll bet it went right through Albuquerque on I-40. So I would love to see that, and I would love to have Willie O'Ree come and have a Willie O'Ree night here at the Outpost.
That would be cool, yeah. If anyone could make it happen, it would be Stan. He's done a lot for us this year. I think we're one of the well-treated organizations in this league for sure. So if he could make it happen, that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, I know for a fact that obviously Stan, he wants to make sure everybody's treated very fairly, and he does everything he can to make sure that it's top of the art or state of the line equipment facility here, not just with the renovations here, but also the guys he's bringing in. Scott Bukestad, shooting coach for many NHL players, former Olympian, former NHL star as well for himself. So, how nice was it to have him here this weekend and kind of teaching you guys maybe some things you didn't even think about before when you had the puck on your stick?
It was great because I'm not really much of a shooter. All my goals have been from in tight, inside the hash marks. I don't really have a great perimeter shot, so he explained that it's because of my curve. My curve is mostly a stick handling and passing curve, which makes sense because I'm more of a passer than I am a shooter, and I like distributing the puck. And he told me to switch curves, so I was going to try it today, but we had this all-skate session today, so tomorrow we'll see how it goes. And, he's legit. He played with Gretzky, had 40 goals in the NHL, and I'm gonna listen to his advice, and I'll try out the new curve and see if my shot gets better.
That's interesting. You say you're not a shooter, but yet you lead the team in goals with 11. So I find that interesting. And
yeah, it's just because I get to the net. If I can get in tight in the net and deke out the goalie, then I'll have a good chance of scoring. But anything outside the perimeter, I haven't scored this year yet. So we'll see. The last 6 weeks, we'll see.
Well, we'll let you go. I know you guys are getting ready for workouts later this afternoon. So Dan and I will get back on the mic here, kind of recap this past weekend, what went right, what went wrong, and look ahead to the Lone Star Brahmas as we conclude the season series against them this weekend in Brahmaland.
I appreciate it. Hopefully we could get 1 or 2 wins. That would be great.
They're going to be a tough team, second overall in the South Division. They're keeping pace with Amarillo as there's a big rush to see who's going to come atop the standings in the South once the regular season concludes after the first weekend of April. So, Alex, I'll let you go. Thanks again so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and good luck this weekend. I'm sure you're going to have tons of fans rooting for you. As much as Dan and I will be, I'll be traveling with the team this weekend to Fort Worth, Texas. The bus will leave on Wednesday, and we'll get back hopefully on Sunday after the weekend series against the Lone Star Brahmas. So, Alex, again, I'll let you go.
Thank you.
Dan and I will get back to episode number 13 of Inside the Pack, the podcast covering all things New Mexico Ice Wolves. It seems a lot of the players have been walking past the pro shop right now, so they might be gearing up and getting ready for their workout around 12:30 or so. Again, we're recording this podcast on February 24th, 2020, so Monday here following the 2 games against the Topeka Pilots. Ice Wolves have an overall record of 12-31, 2-3, good for 29 points. They're currently on a 2-game losing streak, and they are 7-15, 1-1 while on home ice, and while away from the Outpost Ice Arenas, they have a record of 5-16, 1-2. They'll be away this weekend. Dan, thoughts on this upcoming matchup against Lone Star and New Mexico?
Well, Lone Star, it's been one of the best teams in the South Division from the get-go. When they came into our house, they were formidable. There's no question. They're an experienced team. I got to know the coach, who was a mutual friend. And talked to Dan Wildfong, and I was just really impressed with what he's put together. And he said, "Listen, we were where you were. Don't worry about it. It's just the fortunes. They're on a high right now, and that's fine. They were one of the first teams to lock a playoff spot and in the South Division, the NAHL, and." and it's going to be a tough to beat them. We can beat them. There's no question, but we're a different team now. We've got, as you pointed out, we've got a line that has just been on fire, and hopefully Dominique, Sanum, and Makash can keep up what they're doing, and if we can get Brandon Holt back from being sick, then we're going to be in better shape. The word you used this weekend on the broadcast was absolutely right. A depleted bench, because we were down, and it's illness, injury, and suspension. That when you put all three of those together, that can pretty much decimate a hockey team.
Yeah, it was obviously a sight for sore eyes this weekend, looking at that Ice Wolves bench and just feeling that you wanted to help out as best you can, but you just had to sit and watch and see everything unfold in front of our eyes. And again, Alex was talking about it earlier on the podcast as we just let him go to join the rest of the squad and get ready for workouts here this Monday afternoon. Again, the team's leaving in 2 days to head to Fort Worth, Texas. I will say this, though, Dan, that I did see Brandon Holt practicing today in a non-contact jersey, or in a normal jersey. The non-contact ones are blue for practice. That way, that kind of stands out from the rest of the group, alerting everybody else that, hey, they're either injured or something else is going on. They don't want to be hit, but they still are out there practicing. Philip Ekberg, one of those players still recovering from a lower body injury, most likely will travel with the team this weekend, but he sat out this past weekend against the Topeka Pilots, and he was even out in Corpus as well. So we're hoping he can have a speedy recovery. He's a big asset to the Ice Wolves, especially on the man advantage. I know he's amongst the top 5 overall in points right now. He's got the most power play goals on the team, but did see Brandon Holt earlier today, again back in his defensive black jersey for practice. So that's good news for him going forward. Hopefully we can have him this weekend in Lone Star. And as far as the rest of the squad, I know Connor Kemp was out as well. He should be good to go come next weekend, or even you maybe come by Thursday by the time the team arrives in Fort Worth, Texas. So going forward, Dan, recapping this past weekend's games, Topeka very dominant on the man advantage as well. They were a team that was about 18th overall in power play percentage, but had 3 man advantage goals this weekend. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's why when we were talking to Dom and what we said on the broadcast, that's why I thought that the Pilots were trying to draw penalties on us so that they could go on the power play, because they had such a dominant power play this weekend that was it was just impressive just to see what the Pilots have put together. They really are a very good hockey team, even though we have beaten them in the past. It was really tough, and I think as we talked about with Dom, when you're down so many players, and you don't have some of your best defense out there, the power play can suffer, and it suffered for the Ice Wolves this past weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, you could tell just how the power play just wasn't there for them this weekend. They did have 4 opportunities each night this past weekend against Topeka, but just couldn't crack the code. Josh Langford continuing his dominance with the Topeka Pilots, former Ice Wolves goalie. He was 0-3 with New Mexico. He played all those 3 games in October. Since joining the Topeka Pilots, has not lost in regulation. I think he has got an overall record of 9-0-1-1, and is just absolutely killing it with the Topeka Pilots. Then they put in Guy Blessing the night after, and we got one past him after the redirect by Alex Dominique, which was a beautiful hand-eye goal from him. Unfortunately, they couldn't get any more in the back of the net, and it was a 5-1 final on Saturday, and then the Ice Wolves were shut out 3-0 on Friday. That was the first time they've been shut out since Game 2 against the Fairbanks Ice Dogs up in Alaska. So I would say what Alex Dominique was saying earlier on the interview as we started out this podcast was he was right. 2019 obviously was a very slow start for them.
Mm-hmm.
It got better towards the end. That New Year's Eve game against Amarillo concluding the season series. They finally picked up their first win against Amarillo, and a very dominant performance in the bullpen. And coming off of that, then they swept Kenai on the first the first 2 games of 2020. Unfortunately, didn't have the best 4-week road trip that they would have hoped for. I think they finished 2-4-1-1. So, but then they came back out of that, and were really starting to seem as if they were going to set a new franchise record point streak, as they were tied going into this Friday's game with their previous one at 4. So they had a chance to do so. Again, Alex Dominique, Griffin Sanum just lighting the lamp. Very red-hot sticks for both of those gentlemen over the course of the last few weeks. Obviously, a very quiet weekend for them. Only both of them picked up a point on Saturday. Obviously, Dominique with the goal. Griffin Sanum got the secondary assist. Sean Henry with the primary. But going forward, I think that this weekend's going to be a lot different. The Ice Wolves are 0-6 against the Lone Star Brahmas this season. So final 2 games between these 2 teams, Dan, it's going to be high intensity. We haven't faced the Brahmas in quite some time, not since 2019. So obviously we have a lot of new faces on our roster. I would say one thing, though, Dan, is we've seen Henrik Larsson in between the pipes 4 straight games. What are your thoughts on how he's played in the last 4? And maybe if we're going to see him this weekend?
Well, I was absolutely amazed. He was taking shot after shot after shot, and he was doing really, really well. There were just a lot of shots that he really did his best. I think he kept the scores as low as they were. Even the 5-1 game on Saturday. It could have been a whole lot more. But I think that Larson has really stepped up as the primary goalie, and since Graziano left, and Langford left, and I just think he's really doing well. I think the rookie goalie is making a name for himself in the NAHL.
Oh, I certainly think he is as well. I mean, a guy doesn't often play 4 straight times. I'm sure and I know they get the entire week. It's not like they're playing midweek games or anything. So, but still playing the back-to-back, going to practice from Monday to Thursday, then knowing that you're going to play Friday and Saturday, and getting that one day off on a Sunday, it could be taxing on the body alone, and that's when conditioning and your endurance come into a factor. I know goalies don't have to skate around as much as forwards or defensemen, as they tend to stay in their crease. But again, you're playing the most minutes. You're playing every single second, every single minute of the entire game. Not forwards or defensemen aren't doing that. Their times are right around 20. So they're basically playing only a full minute roughly. But we probably had a lot more percentage of time on ice for the 3 lines this past Saturday, with us being out 4 players. But again, we don't have a very lengthy roster. It's going to take every single person to be playing at their absolute best to go up against a second-place team from the South Division this weekend, the Lone Star Brahmas.
Well, Larson was given the South Division Star of the Week by the NAHL last week. That because of the fine work that he did on the 2 4-1 victories over Odessa. The only thing that I would say is there's got to be better communication between him and the bench when there's a delayed penalty. There were a couple of times this weekend when there were delayed penalties against Topeka that he could have gotten off the ice, if at all, or quicker, so we could get that extra attacker on while the delayed penalty was still going. But that's just something that can be easily worked out between the bench and Henrik. So I think that he's gonna do us proud going into the final stretch in this season.
I think personally, he's a phenomenal goalie. He obviously would have loved to have some of the goals back this weekend that went past him, and there are some that were just placed perfectly. Unfortunately, he was not able to get to it. Again, we were talking earlier with Alex Dominique, the leading point scorer for your New Mexico Ice Wolves, with again, over 30 points now for him, 11 goals, 19 assists. I told him, I said, hey, some goals that the opposition scores, you're never going to like it. Obviously, you want to pitch your shutout every time and just tally up as many goals as you can. But sometimes the opposition is going to put on a perfect pass. They're going to place a perfect shot. And, all you can do is kind of tip your hat to them and say, hey, that was, one heck of a shot. And I think that first one on Saturday, the long stretch pass that got right past Prouty, connected from Mushatillo to Zilic. Zilic went on a breakaway and beat Larson. I just think that was, again, it was a breakaway opportunity, one-on-one with a goalie. You don't want to, as a goalie, you don't want to make the first move. You want to stay with them as long as you can. But Zilic didn't really try to head fake Larson. He didn't try to put on, a dangle show. He just went right in between the hash marks and just took a snapshot, and it worked its way to the back of the net. So I do think that there are goals. Of course, every goalie, when you look back on a game, has said, oh, I should have had that or whatnot. But it all can't be placed on the goaltender. There's, 5 other skaters in front of him that also have to realize that, hey, maybe they were out of position or they had just gotten beat. They were caught flat-footed. And I think that could also go back to the fact that this is a young team. This is a young team playing now without a fourth line. So the offense has to roll a lot more, and they're all, that was the first game all season in which we went with 3 lines. So, you're not accustomed to it. You don't try that in practice, in which you're rolling just 3 lines. And I think if we can get the majority of the players back enough to even, make up 2/3 of a fourth line would be beneficial to the Ice Wolves this weekend against the Brahmas. Again, it's going to be on the road for New Mexico. It's going to be the season series conclusion between them and Lone Star, and they're still in search of their first win against the Brahmas, who are only 1 point away from being atop the South Division standings. So all that's going to be playing into a factor this weekend. They have to remain poised in terms of their discipline, too. That was something that kind of got out of hand this past weekend.
Well, the intimidation factor was really high on both Friday and Saturday night. Dom, he writes it off to, well, that's the South Division. I was just amazed. I haven't seen so much physical intimidation from a team in a long time, and the Pilots really seemed to just try to get in under the skin, and they did. I mean, they were on Friday night at the end of the game. It was very clear that tempers, got out of hand, and the Ice Wolves got a suspension out of that, and so that's just a tough thing, and I keep going back, and I said this on the broadcast that. When we had Griffin Sanum on in one of the very beginning podcasts that we did this past year, he said, hockey's a very emotional game, and you just got to keep your emotions in check. Now, he could say that, but as we heard Dominique, Alex talk about, it's hard to do sometimes. When somebody comes up and hits you from behind, as happened on more than one occasion, it's really hard not to come back.
Well, I think, again, we go back to the whole, you were just talking about Griffin Sanum and trying to not go after and get assessed the retaliation calls or stuff like that, or put the team down a man and give the opposition an opportunity to, score a power play goal. But I think it was just interesting that Gonzalez didn't get anything extra for taking Sanum's helmet off. Because that's a penalty in itself in this league,
right.
Is removing somebody else's helmet. I mean, we had that happen to the Ice Wolves not too long ago in a fight. I think it was Sean Henry or Joe Prouty. One of the they got in a fight and we removed the opposition's helmet during it, which obviously led to further penalty minutes. But it was shocking to me, and I think the Ice Wolves bench, because you can immediately see as it happened, head coach Phil Fox and associate head coach Keenan Kelly screaming at the officials that his helmet was yanked off of his head, and the fact that him and Sanum were both assessed just the same penalties, a 2 and a 10. A 2-minute minor for roughing and a 10-minute misconduct. I just thought was interesting. That it's obviously the ref. He has the final say. His ruling is he's basically the judge.
That's right.
There's only one ref out there in the North American Hockey League and 2 linesmen. I'm a huge advocate for getting 2 refs out there. I think it would make for a much better game. NHL has 2 refs, college has 2 refs, USHL, they got 2 refs. I think you can benefit a lot more, 2 more sets of eyes that can call a penalty, that can watch the play, and I think you will see less and less of retaliation stuff because there's more people to break it up. There's 2 more people to make a call and kind of let the teams know that the men in stripes are the ones in charge and not the other way around.
Right. Yeah. It's once the call is made, it's done, and that's it. I suspect that they, could probably, challenge, not challenge it, but they could probably, lodge a complaint if it was totally unfair. But that was just one of those things where I think he was trying. I think the ref he knew it was a physically intimidating game, and I think he was trying to even out the penalties to not put anyone on one side or the other. I think he was just trying to keep control of the game because that's one of the things you worry about in a physical game like we saw both Friday and Saturday night. Is the referees losing control? And the ref and the linesmen are doing their best, but the last thing they want to do is to make it even worse by making a call that can either be lopsided or even help continue the physical play. It's just it's a real balance that refs have to deal with, and I think that's what they were trying to do. They were just trying to be balanced.
Well, the Ice Wolves entered this past Saturday's game with an overall penalty minutes of 886. Dan, well, now they're sitting at 922. They picked up a lot of penalty minutes this past weekend. Alone, there was 74 combined penalty minutes between Topeka and New Mexico. So it was just a highly penalized game. Very high scoring in terms of in favor of the Pilots. Hopefully this weekend the Ice Wolves obviously can take a lot away from what happened this past weekend, learn from their mistakes. That's what the coaching is here for. That's what the video is there for. And we'll just have to wait and see and hope that the Ice Wolves, like Alex was saying earlier, can pick up 3 out of 4, even get their first sweep against the Lone Star Brahmas this weekend.
That would be that would be nice. We beat them in that game in October, that Sunday afternoon match, and that was we
lost 3-1. It was, but you were.
Oh,
that was
right.
But that was probably the closest we came
to
beating them.
It was the closest we came to beating them. But that's what I called a turnaround game for the Ice Wolves. That was said that we can play together as a team in ways that they hadn't been able to do that in the previous 5 weeks. And so I think that Lone Star can be intimidating as well, just because of their experience and there are a lot of 99s on their team. But I really think that they have a chance in North Richland Hills, Texas, this weekend to come out with a victory, if not 1, maybe 2.
So over the course of the last 6 games between us and the Brahmas, basically all 3 games have been played in succession. The first 2 games in Ice Wolves history played against the Lone Star Brahmas was October 4th and the 5th. The Ice Wolves were shut out 4-0 that night on the game 1, 8-0 on game 2. Then we had that October 13th game that you were just alluding to, where it was a 3-1 Brahmas win. Then we went to the next 3 games here on home ice. We played that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Remember, we had the 3-3 here, where the Ice Wolves started out really well on that Thursday game, losing 5-4. So another that was actually their closest one, a 1-goal differential. Game 2 was 4-1, and then game 3 was 4-0. So Ice Wolves, out of the 6 games against them and Lone Star, have been shut out half of the games. Final 2 games this weekend, again, 7 7:30 each night Central Standard Time. So puck drop will be scheduled for 6:30 Mountain Standard Time. The only way to watch it would be on Hockey TV. Make sure you click the away audio to hear myself breaking down the Ice Wolves game, calling the action in Brahmaland, as they call it, and their fans get pretty rowdy too. They have a really nice facility there in Fort Worth, Texas, and actually Phil Fox has a lot of ties with that team as well.
He does,
as with the head coach Dan Wildfong. So he's going back to his grassroots here this weekend. And another team we were talking about with Alex Dominique earlier was the Shreveport Mudbugs, who they lost both games this weekend, so they are held at 62 points. Dan, Topeka swept New Mexico, obviously, so that gave them separation between them and Shreveport. So now 4 points separates Pilots at third and Shreveport at fourth. However, Shreveport's another team that the Ice Wolves have struggled against this season. They haven't faced them since 2019. It's been quite some time. So just like Lone Star, a lot of new faces for the Ice Wolves roster. A lot of new players haven't played against the Brahmas this season. So it's going to be interesting how this weekend goes out and how the second weekend of March in the middle of 3 straight on home ice for the Ice Wolves, as they will host the Mudbugs that weekend. How that turns out, because I mean, Dominique is a rookie in this league, and as is a large portion of the Ice Wolves roster. But he said it perfectly in terms of everybody else. Shreveport's probably the biggest rival for New Mexico in their inaugural season.
Well, it's going to be that's going to be an interesting homestand for sure in March. So be sure to get your tickets. We got the Corpus Christi Ice Rays on March 6th and 7th. Then Shreveport comes in 13th and 14th, and then Corpus comes back on the 20th and the 21st. So, and that's the final weekend of home games here at the Outpost Ice Arena. Tickets.nmicewolves.com and get your tickets, because it's fun hockey. After the game on Saturday night, I came out of the pro shop here, and I turned the corner, and there's one of my doctors standing there with her family, and I said, "Gee, what are you doing here?" And her sister or friend or whoever it was, said, "Gee, you look awfully official." And then she reached over and she picked up the tag that I wear when I'm running around here on game night, and she said, "Oh, you really are official." And it was the first time that they had ever been to a hockey game. They absolutely loved it. So come on out. Last Saturday night was skate with the players afterwards, post game skate.
And that was back-to-back Saturdays. Great turnouts for both nights as well.
And so I told them, I said, God, they had 8 or 9-year-olds there with them, and I said, take them down, go get some skates, go skate. The players love it, the kids will love it. It's great fun. So
a bunch of stuff signed, and who knows, maybe something you get signed by one of the players, he could end up in pro hockey one day.
That's right.
So you never know.
That's right.
Obviously, a lot of these guys are still young, still have plenty of years of junior eligibility. So they're, I think we're looking to return. Alex was saying earlier, we don't have 99s in the lineup. We do have Aaron Dickstein, who's backing up Henrik Larson, who again has not played in the NAHL yet. He's got 12 games under his belt this season for the Louisiana Drillers. So he's a 20-year-old. He'll be 21 on April 8th. Again, so he's a 1999 born goaltender. And then we also have Philip Ekberg. But besides that, everybody else is not a 99. That
right.
means we can return them for next season. So we're
Sure.
looking at anywhere from 18 to 20 possible returners for the Ice Wolves after the first season. And when you look at the rest of the South Division, at least I think 3 out of the 4 playoff teams right now are going to be losing upwards of 13 plus, 15 plus. So it bodes well for the Ice Wolves going forward. Dominique was alluding to earlier, chemistry's got to be a big thing that they got to keep working on throughout the rest of the season so they can come back, making passes knowing that somebody's going to be there instead of, blindly playing it to an open space.
Right. Absolutely. It's just been a wonderful thing to watch this team just grow and get better from time to time. They really have done that, and I think we've talked about some turnaround games. We've talked about just some real shifts in confidence. over the time. It's been fun to watch this team grow in their inaugural season, and it's going to be fun to see who comes back next year and see what we have left. And see who new players. We've got a couple of tenders that were announced during this year, so they've been working on the future as well as the present, and I just think we're going to see even better hockey next year.
I also had heard word that Maldonado and Tyler Green might be making an appearance this weekend for the Ice Wolves against the Lone Star Brahmas. So Maldonado's a Plano, Texas native, so not too far away from home. He's near the Allen area of the Lone Star State. So, and then again, the Ice Wolves make one more trip out to Texas before the season concludes. That will be against the Odessa Jackalopes. They'll wrap up their season series at the end of March with them. So, again, the Ice Wolves, like we were saying, it's going to be fan appreciation night, all that fun stuff on the March 20th and the 21st, my apologies. And then the 27th and the 28th is when they head to the Odessa Jackalopes. After that, they'll finish their first ever season in the North American Hockey League in Topeka, Kansas. So a lot of season series are concluding here in the late stages of the season. They'll still have to play 4 games against the Corpus Christi Ice Rays, who they're 8 points behind. So those 4 games could be very crucial, Dan. That's 8 points right there.
That's a perfect opportunity to move up in the standings. They're well out of the playoff picture, but they could move up in the standings and finish with a not a record not to be ashamed of. In terms of the number of rookies that they've had on this team and what they've been able to do and put together. I think it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that March 13th game with Shreveport because my son is going to be in town with his wife, and he used to play hockey here at the Outpost. In fact, he used to play on the same team with Nathan Armijo, who is in charge of the host families here and also added to his portfolio the pro shop here. So we saw him earlier today, and Nathan's going to, I'm sure, want to see Matt when Matt Webster shows up here on the 13th to see the game against Shreveport.
Well, I must say, as we're talking about this again, one more team has been added to the list of playoff berths, and that was the New Jersey Titans with their win over this past weekend. So they are the first team out of the East Division to clinch a playoff spot. Fairbanks the only one out of the Midwest. Central, absolutely no one yet. Still up for grabs. And as for yours truly, the South Division, everything is locked up. All 4 teams, Amarillo, Lone Star, Topeka, and Shreveport. It just depends. We'll have to wait and see who's going to be playing who when the time comes. Again, first top 4 teams from each division go on to the Robertson Cup. First place plays 4th. 2 and 3rd. The first and second place teams get home ice advantage. It's a best of 5 series, Dan. Obviously, the Ice Wolves won't be in it, which is unfortunate. But like we were saying earlier, they have a chance to get into 5th place, which would not be too bad considering they didn't get out of 7th until until their first 2 games of 2020 against Kenai. So, in terms of the playoff series, it's a best of 5 for the first 2 rounds to decide who's going to be coming out of your division. So then there will be 4 remaining teams. They then head to, I believe it's still going to be held at Blaine, Minnesota at the Schwann Super Rink where the showcase was. Those 4 teams, I guess, get reseeded. I forget how it works. But basically, you play a best of 3 in that 3rd round, and then the championship is a best of 1. So you obviously want to be on your A game for that Robertson Cup, the chance at the Robertson Cup during the 2nd week of May. So obviously the Ice Wolves, 6 weeks left in their inaugural season, half of which will be against playoff teams. They'll see one this weekend, 2nd place Lone Star Brahmas. Dan, they have an overall record of 39, 9-0-1. They're also 2nd best in the overall league. The Ice Wolves are 24th overall in the North American Hockey League, 6 points behind the Springfield Junior Blues. Out of their last 10 games, though, Dan, New Mexico 4-5-0-1. So they're basically a 500 team picking up, points in 5 of their last 10.
Absolutely. That's why I say they do not have anything to apologize for their record in 2020 at all, or even putting together a team from scratch has got to be one of the hardest things to do in hockey, and that's what Phil Fox and Keenan Kelly have had to do this year, is to put a team together from scratch. I think they've done marvelous work with these kids. It's wonderful to see when they win, but it's just wonderful to see when they play. And I think that we can learn something from the e-bug that happened in Toronto this weekend. If you haven't seen the tape on online someplace, on social media someplace, it was just amazing, all of the things that David Ayers, who was called up as an emergency backup goalie, e-bug, to play in Toronto, but to play for the Hurricanes, the Carolina Hurricanes. All of the players on the Hurricanes, including Coach Rod Brindamore, who you probably got to see playing for the Flyers, they just kept saying to him, just go out there and have fun. They knew that their two goalies were injured, and they were going with an e-bug. And so the Zamboni driver and also the practice goalie for the Toronto Marlies of the AHL, David Ayers, 42 years old, comes into a dressing room, puts on his equipment, and they said, just go out there and have fun. Go play. It was, I mean, it just told me everything that I love about hockey.
He let in 2 goals on his first 2 shots he faced. The rest of the time, didn't allow one more. Hurricanes went on to win 6-3 over the Toronto Maple Leafs again. A lot of fans on Twitter and Instagram and whatnot are Toronto fans wondering how they're going to recover from this, because they just lost against, by 3 goals. They lost against a goalie that never played in the NHL before. It was his, actually, I read that his career was stopped because he had to do a kidney transplant.
He had a kidney transplant. His mother donated a kidney for him back in 2004 or something.
Yeah, something like that, a while back. And, he becomes the oldest NHL goaltender to win in his debut, 42 years old, I think 194 days or something like that.
Yep.
So congratulations to Dave Ayers. And he was wearing number 90, too. I thought that was just fascinating. Goalies' numbers, and even for here in the Ice Wolves, you get the Henrik Larsson's number 1. You get the guys in the 30 ranges. We saw Josh Langford wearing number 40, but 90. That was just funny to see. He was wearing a Toronto Marlies mask because that's the equipment that he had. I mean, it's just congratulations to him. That just I think it was NHL or somebody made a graphic and said, who would you want on your roster? Dave Foster, who was the accountant or something like that within the Chicago Blackhawks organization, and he was thrown into a game emergency backup style, a lot younger than David Ayers is. Or would you want Ayers? And obviously everybody was going back and forth in the comments,
Sure.
But it's just it's fascinating because you won't see that type of thing in basketball. You won't see that type of thing you might see it in the NFL if they go through all their quarterbacks. Heck, the Eagles were almost pulling anybody they could this past season with the roller coaster they were going through. But
sure.
it more so in baseball, you'll see sometimes outfielders maybe come and play pitching and stuff like that. But you're not. It's interesting in hockey that you have that e-bug, and it could be some random Joe Schmo, but he underneath the lights could be fantastic. And Ayers made some pretty good saves as well.
He did.
A lot of people were also saying they were glad that NHL trade deadline today at 3 p.m. Eastern. A lot of people were saying they're hoping not to see him on the block. So,
well, I think that he got his dream came true. That he was able to do that, and I was talking to my son, and I talked about it on the phone last night. My son was a goalie here, and so he said that David Ayers represented all of wannabe goalies, who are in their 40s. My son is in his 40s, and that David Ayers was representing them on the ice, playing for the Hurricanes in Toronto, and he also said that the Hurricanes are flying him down to Raleigh for a home game this weekend, and that he's going to be there, and I guess they're going to have a David Ayers night at the arena in North Carolina.
Yeah, he's supposed to sound the siren for them, and on top of that, I want to say I hope they put him on the ZAM for one of the intermissions. I think the fans would absolutely lose their mind. The celebration post-game, too, was just awesome when the Hurricanes mobbed him in the locker room when he walked in. Absolutely phenomenal guy, phenomenal story coming out of the NHL over this past weekend, which I actually think, I want to say, Dan, kind of hid the fact that Ovi got 700 goals. Ovi, the Great Eight, as they call him, became the 8th player in NHL history to record 700 goals. And within the next few hours, this whole David Ayers thing came out of the Hurricanes.
Just totally eclipsed.
Yeah, it's
totally
like
eclipsed.
Everybody
Ovi's,
stopped talking about Ovi. And maybe
Yeah.
he's okay with that. Maybe he doesn't want the spotlight on him. But Wayne Gretzky tweeted at Ovechkin and said, "Congratulations on hitting 700. I'll see you at 800."
Isn't that great?
And I think again, Ovechkin's in his mid-30s. If he's playing for the next 4 or 5 years, realistically, he can hit 800 pretty easily.
Good.
Now, will he get to Gretzky's number?
Probably not.
I don't know. Gretzky was pretty close to 900 himself, so
Right.
You're looking. Can Ovechkin, keep his form? He really hasn't had a season in which he's kind of went downhill. He's just been consistent throughout his entire NHL career. Again, a lot of guys at this level of hockey, no matter what, NA3HL, NAHL, USHL, the junior level of hockey, even the Canadian leagues as well, they emulate what these NHL guys do. They want to be, the next great one. They want to be Sid the Kid, and they're using
Absolutely.
their curbs, they're using their sticks, and even the youth players here throughout NM Ice, from the minis to the mites that we saw this past weekend on the ice during first intermission, all the way up to U16s and Bantams. You see guys want to reach the NHL level, and I think that's good that they are seeing guys in this era hit 700.
Right.
It's not uncommon, and I think we're going to see more and more of it. We're seeing a lot of guys hit their 1,000th NHL game. So I think that's good for the league overall. I think that's good for these young players who aspire to be
Absolutely.
in the show one day.
You bet. I think it's been just a wonderful week for hockey, at all levels, and it's just been fun. I'm a little excited about hockey. You can probably tell, but if you have not been to the Outpost Ice Arena, you're anywhere near Albuquerque, bring some friends, come and see some of the last 6 home games that start a week from this weekend. So the first 3 weekends in March, get yourself some tickets and come see hockey.
We've sold out basically every game of 2020. More and more fans are starting to recognize us. We're actually at the Super STEM Saturday event at the Albuquerque Convention Center this past weekend. From 9 to 3, the Ice Wolves had a table demonstrating the science behind shooting the puck, the torque in the stick when they flex it, and everything from the moment they make contact to it. It was broken down scientifically, everything like that. People were just coming up that didn't even know they had hockey around, and I actually saw a few of them that grabbed pocket schedules. We had two boxes of pocket schedules there. I actually saw a few at the game on Saturday. So It's great spreading the word, letting more and more people know. Again, feel free to, if you might share some of our social media stuff on your own timeline and let more people know that we're around, because this team is not going at, this team will be here for a long time. I can guarantee that.
I'm thinking Stan Hubbard has got a commitment to this team. He rarely initiates anything that he doesn't stick with. I've known Stan for over 30 years, and he's committed. He's committed to this program, and creating hockey at all levels across the state as well, not just here in Albuquerque. So hockey is here, and come on and see it.
Well, we just got a new toy as well, Dan, that arrived on a truck this morning, and I don't want to give too much information away, but it is replacing, it's much needed update, and you can see it on March 6th and the 7th when the Ice Wolves host the Corpus Christi Ice Rays for the Ice Rays' first trip here to the chili capital of the world. So I was talking to their broadcaster not too long ago when we were at the American Bank Center, home of the Ice Rays. He was saying how they wish they had back-to-back weekends or theirs was a little more separated than what it is now, because they actually. The Ice Wolves have 6 remaining home games, and 4 of those games will be against Corpus. And basically in opposite weekends. We'll start the 3-week homestand at the beginning of March with the Corpus Christi Ice Rays. We'll play Shreveport. Then we'll end our inaugural season in terms of home ice games with the Corpus Christi Ice Rays on the 3rd week of March. So I know for them it's going to be a lot of travel. Ice Wolves got to take advantage of that going forward. But right now, eyes are on the prize for this weekend. For 2 big games, it's going to be a tough weekend series, just like it was this past weekend. Any team that earns an X next to their name, Dan, is a team to not take for granted. And again, any team, no matter what sport you're playing on, can beat another in any given night. Obviously, the Ice Wolves have beaten Topeka 3 times already this season, but they've also lost to them 3 times as well. So, it just depends on who's out there. The shots. They were getting a lot of shots this weekend. They were out shooting Topeka heavily, especially on Saturday. And I would say they would probably had a lot of opportunities to get on the board. Unfortunately, very active sticks on the defense of the Pilots, clogging the shooting lane in the slot. And Langford and Blessing were just standing on their head, making saves they had to make for Langford to get a shutout and for Blessing to only allow 1.
Sure, it was. There were a lot of shots on goal, and so I just think that it's going to be I just got a hunch that that there's going to be some good action in Lone Star. It's going to go in our favor this weekend.
Well, Dan, unless you have anything else, we're going to conclude episode number 13 of Inside the Pack. We started things off with Alex Dominique's interview, and we'll see you next week for episode number 14 after this weekend's matchup against the Lone Star Brahmas. Hopefully you tune in to Hockey TV, 7:30 p.m. on Friday, 7:30 on Saturday for the 2 games in Brahmaland.